Part 52. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 511. The Sea of Eternal Night, Avalon. Calculating the time, it should be morning here. If there is a sun, it will be bright. The alarm clock rang. Lying on the bed with his eyes open, Beckman, who was obviously very awake, raised his hand and turned off the alarm clock on the bedside. Then he sat up neatly. Although it is true that there is a set alarm clock. But every time, Beckman would wake up exactly 5 minutes before the alarm went off. He wouldn't do anything, just lie quietly on the bed, waiting for the alarm clock to sound. Then I get up and clean up. Don't know what this quirk is. After washing up, he put on a brand new suit. He stood in front of the full-length mirror and thought for a while. In the end, Beckman chose not to wear a tie. That seems a little too formal. It made him look less like a pirate and more like a civilian official. It's a bit funny to say that after so many years, Beckman's pirate aura is no longer very strong. Except for the fact that he still started out as a pirate, in other aspects, he was more like an elegant noble. Orgrim gave him great authority, and he was qualified to intervene in all matters in Avalon. But Beckman still only cares about the things he should care about, such as Doflamingo. He never asks more questions. But even so, the magnanimity cultivated by holding power for many years cannot be underestimated. Wherever he goes, just one look will tell people that he is a big shot. Open the door and take a breath of fresh air outside. Beckman felt refreshed, and then instinctively walked towards Orgrim's palace. However, after taking only 2 steps, Beckman shook his head in amusement and stopped. In the past, when Orgrim was around, he always had to have dinner with Orgrim. Now, that Orgrim guy ran away with Queen Stussy. And Drest lived directly with Mihawk again. Originally, Neiman could still share the joys and sorrows with him, but now, Neiman was sent to Dressrosa by Orgrim in the name of exchange and learning to mix with Doflamingo. What the hell is communication and learning? You, the big brother, want Neiman and Doflamingo to pair up? In private, Beckman once asked Neiman these questions, such as whether she had any favorite candidates. In fact, with Neiman's identity, as Orgrim's sister, she can be chosen as a hero on the sea. If the man is not convinced, Orgrim is willing to beat him until he is convinced. Neiman was a little shy when faced with this question. Beckman kept asking questions for a long time, but she also looked like she didn't say anything. In the end, Beckman focused on Mihawk and Doflamingo, asked them in detail, and observed Neiman's expression. It was obvious that Neiman had no reaction at all when Mihawk was mentioned. Just that feeling of treating him as a trustworthy companion. When Doflamingo was mentioned, Neiman's expression seemed slightly moved. That's why Beckman didn't stop it. If you think about it carefully, Doflamingo is indeed a talented person, and there is nothing that Beckman can do to stop him. In the huge Avalon, without Orgrim, Neiman, and others, Beckman felt a little lonely. 1 or 2, they all ran away. Does this mean they think I am easy to bully, so they are squeezing my labor force? Beckman complained helplessly. He seemed to have lost his appetite for breakfast, so Beckman turned around and walked towards his office. Sitting at the desk, Beckman began to flip through the documents on the table. It should have been left by Plank last night. Since it was not an urgent document or intelligence, Beckman got off work on time and went back to rest. I opened it for the first time today. I opened it and took a look at it. It was about news about the red-haired pirates. Orgrim hasn't had time to give any orders yet, but Gangplank is not the kind of person who has to give orders before he does it. As Avalon's intelligence leader, he is far more perceptive than Orgrim. Although the red-haired pirates withdrew from the New World, neither Gangplank nor Beckman really put this guy down. But the news is really not urgent. That's it. It is said that the red-haired pirates were stationed in the windmill village of the Kingdom of Goa in the East China Sea. They began to use that place as their base camp and recuperated their strength in the East China Sea. This was not news worth paying attention to, but something strange is that, Windmill Village is the hometown of the naval hero Garp. It seems that Garp's grandson is raised there, right? Is Shank's appearance there premeditated? Or is it unintentional? Are there any plans or arrangements? After thinking about it for a while, Beckman shook his head and felt that these were not big things. He just asked Planck to continue to keep an eye on it. Turning to the second page, this information was a bit interesting. G-5. The Navy had some conflicts with the Whitebeard pirates. Newgate personally took action and suppressed Fujitora Yishang and Jun. However, he did not achieve a complete victory. He only dared the Navy to leave his territory. This seems to prove one thing, that is, the G-5 Navy, the only apparent strength of the Navy in this new world, seems to have been greatly strengthened. It's time to pay attention to this group of Marines. The Sphinx seems to have a good relationship with the guy named Fujitora Isho. Wait until she comes back and ask her. Beckman smacked his lips and said. It's not a big deal either. Conflicts between the Navy and pirates happen every day, even between G-5 and the Whitebeard pirates. As long as things go down and there is no sign of turning into a war, it is just a daily operation. After putting down the document, Beckman opened another semi-internal document. But it's not from Avalon, it's from Wano. What happened to that guy Kaido? After looking at it twice, Beckman smiled and said, it's a pity that Orgrim is not in Avalon and can't go to the appointment. It turned out that Wano country was going to hold an annual event. Fire ritual, this festival is about flattering Kaido. Compliment him, the protector of Wano, and so on. Kaido invited Orgrim to go and boasted about his newly developed abilities and his increased strength. But unfortunately, Orgrim definitely doesn't have time to go. Of course, Beckman felt that even if Orgrim was on Avalon Island and saw this document, he would definitely pretend not to see it as long as Kaido didn't harass him with call bugs. After smiling and putting down the document, Beckman reached out from the cabinet behind him and took out a box of coffee powder, preparing to brew himself a cup of coffee. At this moment, another little head poked out from the other side of the door. With pink hair, there was no need to guess, Beckman said with a smile. Reiju, what's the matter? That's right, Vinsmoke Reiju. She was a little older than before. Geiji followed Orgrim from the North Sea to Melview, and then, after the bank affairs started, he came to Avalon again. When you come here, you must bring Reiju with you. So Beckman met Reiju again, and he still looked very fond of Reiju. Because of this, the status of this guy in Avalon has risen accordingly. And many people also know that Lord Hammer has given him a chance. Geiji has started to hand over the war mercenary business of the Kingdom of Germa to the Avalon Dark Group in exchange for some shares or something. After this, he will gradually begin to whitewash Germa. After hearing Beckman's voice, Reiju put a smile on her face, walked in with steps, holding a food box in her hand, and said, I have been waiting for you in the restaurant for a long time, but have you seen me yet? Come and ask Mr. Hotz. He said that when he saw you coming here directly early in the morning, I knew you must not have had breakfast, so I brought it to you. Mr. Beckman. Beckman was stunned for a moment and looked at the little girl Reiju was holding the food box in her hand, and she felt a little warm in her heart. In the past, it seemed that only Neiman cared about whether she ate or not, right? Orgrim. That guy doesn't care so much. He doesn't care at all whether he goes to see him for dinner or not. He just occasionally asks on a whim. But Beckman wouldn't take it to heart, just like he wouldn't care whether Orgrim eats or not. Two grown men, why are you being pretentious? But this feeling of being cared for and noticed is really different. Ha ha ha, thank you, Reiju. Beckman said with a smile, with a faint purple aura in his mouth. When facing Reiju, Beckman can always speak in the most relaxed manner, so he will inevitably bring poisonous aura when he breathes. But Reiju didn't care about this at all, and even liked it. Reiju happily placed the food on the table, and Beckman also put down the coffee powder in his hand, and walked from the desk to the table with a smile. He sat down at the table next to him. It was obvious that Reiju hadn't eaten either. The two guys, one big and one small, were chatting and eating breakfast. The scene had a slightly warm feeling. "I already got the news about what you asked me to inquire about last time," Beckman said while eating. Reiju had a look of expectation in her eyes and asked, "Really? Where is my brother?" "In the East China Sea, there is a sea restaurant called Baradi. The boss seems to be very good to him, don't worry," Beckman said with a smile. "Sanji, this kid doesn't know what happened." In short, with the help of Reiju, he escaped from the Vinsmoke family. Then he went around in circles, and finally he really died again. Appeared in the Baradi restaurant in Donghai and became a trainee cook. After knowing that her brother was doing well, Reiju had a satisfied smile on her face, and then said softly, "Actually, I feel that there have been some changes in my family recently. My mother's health is getting better and better. There is always a smile on my father's face. If Sanji was still here, he might not have left." We talked about this topic a little bit more. Beckman took a sip of the hot soup and asked with a smile, "Robin left with Orgrim, Lucci left with the Sphinx, Yamato was practicing kendo with Andre all day long, and you are alone on the island. Are you getting bored?" Reiju shook her head and said, "No, I've been playing with Lily recently, and we have a good relationship. Lily Ernst Mark, the little giant girl who ate the mini fruit. She joined the Warhammer Pirates and has been an apprentice pirate for some time. However, she doesn't seem to be a person who is very keen on fighting, and the giant's concept of time is completely different from humans. If you focus on one thing, you will often spend several years thinking about it. Previously, she seemed to be obsessed with something new, and she had been immersed in it, and Orgrim didn't care about her. However, it is said that her relationship with Andrest, Robin, Yamato, and others is very good and they seem to be very close. It's not like being excluded from the Warhammer Pirates. As for her father, he is now the head chef at Avalon. Hans Fry originally planned to leave after his daughter got used to it. But I couldn't bear it. The money given by Orgrim was too much. Moreover, Avalon is a dark holy land where materials from all over the world are abundant. There is no need for him to run around to collect, just say a word, and a lot of good things can be sent to him for him to use. So in the end, he fell under the sugar-coated bullets of the Warhammer Pirates and became the head chef of the Warhammer Pirates. Live directly in Avalon. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 512. New World, Dressrosa. In the royal palace on King's Heights, Doflamingo was holding a red wine glass in his hand and chatting with the man sitting in front of him with a smile on his face. If we say that Doflamingo's style is still a bit flashy, wearing a pink flamingo feather coat, beanie shoes, tight pants, and so on, then the man sitting on the sofa in front of him was a little more formal. Maybe it's because of Doflamingo's influence, or maybe he just prefers pink. Anyway, that man was also wearing a pink suit, looking a little bit coquettish. Over the past few months, my hair has grown longer, and my gray-green and medium short hair is combed back into a slicked back hair, which is shiny and shiny. He doesn't wear any magic mirror like Doflamingo. But there is a big gold chain hanging around his neck, the kind that looks very rich at first glance. All 10 fingers of both hands are wearing gold rings. Each ring has a gemstone of a different color, and a gold chain can be seen hanging around the waist. Black leather shoes, polished to a shiny shine. There is not a single wrinkle on the suit. In short, the first impression given is that he is rich and arrogant. That's right, This man is Gilder Tetzalo, who was as humble as a wild dog a few months ago. Now he has become a master. Doflamingo clinked the wine glass with him and said with a smile, "Do you know what we call you in the dark world recently?" Tetzalo took a sip of wine. At this time, he was no longer the same as when he was on Roaring Island. The awkwardness and uneasiness facing Doflamingo. On the contrary, he is now calm and has more confidence. Obviously, during this period of time, he has done very well in all aspects, and has been recognized by Doflamingo and Orgrim. Listening to Doflamingo's question, Tetzalo raised his brows slightly and asked with a smile, "I really haven't noticed, what's wrong? What did you call me?" "Fura, Golden Emperor, how about it?" "Isn't it great?" Doflamingo said with a smile. "Golden Emperor," Tetzalo's eyes flashed with light, and he repeated with a somewhat happy tone. He believed in the supremacy of money and worshipped gold. So he was called the Golden Emperor, and he was very happy in his heart. In addition, his ability, even the golden fruit, can indeed be called a match. This name is very suitable for the actual operator of the Dark Bank of Avalon. "I like this title very much, ha 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 ha," Tetzalo said with a smile, without hiding anything. Doflamingo didn't care about his confidence. On the contrary, Doflamingo liked confident people like Tetzalo very much. Of course, the premise is you have to be a very capable person. At the beginning, when he handed over the bank to Tetzalo to operate, he would always keep an eye on it to see if Tetzalo could complete the general direction he gave, for fear that Tetzalo would Zorro made some mistakes or something. After all, the Dark Bank of Avalon is a crucial core construction for Orgrim and him. But soon, Doflamingo discovered that Tetzalo seems to be very talented in this regard, or in other words, his golden sense is very sharp, and he can accurately seize various opportunities and respond to them. He will do what he orders quickly and perfectly. And it can also check for leaks and fill in the gaps, quickly laying out the Avalon Dark Bank and getting it on the right track. Therefore, Doflamingo also gradually delegated power, handing over all major and small matters of the Avalon Dark Bank. Tetzalo went to make arrangements. Facts have proved that Tetzalo has not let him down once so far. So Doflamingo is very satisfied with Tetzalo and appreciates him quite a lot. He is ready to regard him as his own deputy, to train. Perhaps, when the Don Quixote family is fully integrated into the Warhammer Pirates system in the future, Tetzalo should also be able to become a big leader, right? In short, Doflamingo is very optimistic about him. Fura, as long as you like it, how is your ability development going? Although you believe in money first, in this world, strength is also a very important part. Don't be like me, Doflamingo said this with a slightly regretful tone. But he also had too high demands on himself. If there were no Orgrim and no Beckman, Doflamingo would be more satisfied with himself. But comparing Orgrim and Beckman, you will feel that he is indeed lame in terms of strength. He can recognize these shortcomings, but he just doesn't have time to make up for them because he is too busy. He has been very busy since he was a child. It is a good thing for Tetzalo to remind Tetzalo earlier and let him adjust earlier. However, even though Doflamingo said this, he also felt that given Tetzalo's age and his heavy burden, even if his strength really improves in the future, it might only be to his own level, right? Hearing Doflamingo's concern, Tetzalo smiled and said, "It's barely enough, but I think the ability of the golden fruit is a good match." When he spoke, the gold ring hanging on his finger was slightly deformed and twisted, which was affected by his ability. Tetzalo wore gold and silver and looked like a nouveau riche. It's not just because of his getting rich overnight, it's because of his mental imbalance or something. Perhaps he did have the idea of showing off his wealth. But more importantly, the gold jewelry he wears are all his weapons. The media needed to use moves in conjunction with his abilities. After all, this guy hasn't awakened his abilities yet. How can he do it without some gold on him? It seems that Mr. Chui is very accurate in reading people, and he took a liking to you at first sight. Doflamingo joked with a smile. When he mentioned Orgrim, Tetsalo had a look of respect on his face, nodded quickly and said, being able to be appreciated by Lord Hammer is the best thing in my life. The most important opportunity. I really can't imagine that a few months ago, I was looking for a singing job in a pub, tisk. The two chatted about this, laughing from time to time, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. Not long after, the door was opened, and then Stella and Neiman walked in together. When the two walk together, the contrast is really obvious. Stella is soft and weak, looking like a weak woman. As for Neiman, she is as powerful as a dragon and a tiger, and she is very powerful at first glance, and she is not easy to mess with. Come to Drey's Rosa has been with her for a while. After arriving here, Neiman and Stella got to know each other, and their relationship quickly became close. Now they are close friends. Karanda Neiman is Orgrim, his sister. One of the real big names in the Warhammer Pirates. His wife can become best friends with her. Tizero feels like he can wake up from his dreams with a smile. He also feels more and more that Stella is the angel who comes to save his life. Maybe both of them. Everyone has encountered many dark pasts, but those are the past after all, and the future is waiting for them. What are you talking about? Young master, Neiman said with a smile. Stella is very sensible. She knows that she doesn't understand what these people are going to say, but she also has things she can do to the best of her ability, such as pouring tea and preparing refreshments. This is what she is doing at this time. Young master, please stop shouting, okay? Neiman, just like before, can't you call me Dover? Doflamingo said helplessly, without explaining what they were talking about just now. However, Neiman did not ask further. This was just the beginning of a topic. Listening to Doflamingo's complaints, Neiman smiled. He said, I am now a serious cotter of the Don Quixote family. Of course I have to follow the locals and follow the locals. I will call you young master together with your subordinates. Fu, Master Chui may feel distressed when he hears these words. Has his precious sister turned to me? Doflamingo joked with a smile. Anyway, this is my brother's arrangement. Neiman smiled and said. Then, she took out a document from her document bag, handed it to Doflamingo, and said, this is the financial statement of Avalon Group for this quarter. Although I don't understand it very well, I took a quick look and it seems to have improved a lot compared to the previous quarter. Doflamingo took the file, opened it and looked directly at the drawing statistics. He didn't look at the rest. After glancing twice, Doflamingo said with a smile, yes, banks can indeed promote efficiency. There is a dark group in the vanguard, which proves the economic benefits. We don't need to forcefully interfere in the future. People who want to earn more Baileys will naturally try. Yeah, Neiman shrugged and responded casually. She was in charge of construction projects in Avalon before. She led the team and arranged almost 70 to 80% of the buildings in Avalon. It was built by a construction team. She didn't know much about finance, banking, and dark groups, so she couldn't quite understand what Doflamingo said. But it was a good thing to know. Thanks to Tetsalo. Neiman said to Tizalo with a smile. Tizalo also looked modest, waved his hand and said, it all depends on everyone's joint efforts. After the bank matters are arranged, what are you going to do? Do you need me to say hello to you and ask Big Brother to transfer you to Avalon? Neiman asked Tizero with a smile. Tizero was a little moved when he heard this. Avalon, that's the core. Of course he wanted to go. But after thinking about it for a while, Tizero still shaking his head, he said, no need for the moment. The bank matter is just a task and test given to me by Mr. Chui. Even if I do this well, I won't get any credit at all, let alone take credit. If I can, after this, I plan to start another business. Doflamingo looked at the report and asked without raising his head what business. Tetsalo smiled and said casino, gaming industry. Doflamingo was originally reading the report. Hearing this, brother glanced at Tetsalo in surprise, then said with a smile, it's interesting, we thought of going together. Yes, Doflamingo is also planning to transform his business. Previously, his business was very complex and he had to be involved in almost everything, such as the slave trade or something like that. But now, with the changes of the times, the Revolutionary Army has become more and more powerful, and slave liberation movements have occurred from time to time in various places. Although the times were chaotic, this business was still very prosperous, but Doflamingo felt that it was almost time to stop. Once the peak period of profit was over, this business would have no meaning and value. Avalon now has no shortage of these slaves to serve as its population, and there is no need to continue doing this kind of thing. So he planned to throw away all those useless businesses, reorganize resources, and get involved in new industries. It is said that the gambling city rain feast opened by that guy Crocodile in the first half of the Grand Line was very profitable. You can try it yourself. Unexpectedly, Tetsalo actually thought of joining him. Is this the tacit understanding of rich people? Love it, love it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 513. When Tetsalo heard that Doflamingo seemed to have this plan, he was also happy and asked, really? It seems that my vision is good, ha 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 ha. Doflamingo nodded head, and then said, but there is a big risk in doing this kind of thing, that is, the environment cannot be too chaotic. Once it is chaotic, how can anyone still have the heart to take risks to play these? New World, the environment is pretty good now, and the Four Emperors structure is relatively stable, with only occasional small quarrels. But looking at Master Chui's actions, when he completes the integration of Amazon and Lily, he will most likely be the first to launch a war. This is a huge blow to the gaming industry. Doflamingo has obviously considered these things. What he said makes sense. Once a large-scale war breaks out in the New World, the sea will become more chaotic. It will definitely affect this kind of business. After all, it can come most of the people who play, except for the bad gamblers who are addicted to gambling, are rich people. Rich people cherish their lives, there is no reason for the New World to turn into a pot of porridge, and they are still running madly to the casino. It's really hard to know how to die. Moreover, if we start planning this business now, we will wait until it actually starts operating. Maybe it happens to be the time when the New World is going to be in chaos, which is really unlucky to open the door. You might lose blood. The others also nodded, feeling that what Doflamingo said made sense. Tetsalo then smiled and said, so, we have to find another way. I have also considered these issues. If Mr. Hammer is willing to support it, I don't think the problem is big. Doflamingo touched it. He lowered his chin and then asked, do you want Mr. Chui to prioritize this business? Try not to start a war first? Then I advise you to give up on this idea, although Mr. Chui is also very keen on making money and do business and develop soft power, but in essence, he is still a pirate, and his ambition is the most essential priority. Now, this ambition is to defeat the other sea heroes and dominate the New World. For this goal, everything else has to give way. Neiman also nodded and said, yes, Tetsalo, maybe you haven't joined us for too long, and you don't know my eldest brother very well. Although he doesn't seem to be very responsible on the surface, when it comes to really important things, he has always done it himself, such as recruiting experts from all walks of life, the Barrett of the past, the Hancock of today. No matter how far away he is, he will go and do it in person to show his sincerity. This represents the priority in his heart. In our New World, Our strategy, the ultimate goal, with the highest priority, is always to defeat other opponents. Hearing this, Tizero nodded involuntarily, but soon said with a smile, "You have misunderstood. Although I don't know the priorities in Mr. Chui's heart, I also know that I cannot have too much influence, let alone it is impossible to change Master Chui's thoughts and intentions. What I mean is to use the tacit relationship between Master Chui and the world government to do this." Doflamingo thought for a moment and asked with great interest, "Tell me what you think. If possible, we can mention this matter to Master Hammer together." Tizalo didn't hide anything and said directly, "Whether the new world is chaotic or not is not important, because we have no need to limit this business to the new world." Chain? Multi-sea layout? Doflamingo raised his eyebrows and asked. "This is an indispensable means. We really need to do this to sink the industrial chain and spread risks. But the real core is to have a benchmark and build the world's top casino, or entertainment city. And my idea is not limited to the new world. We can make this entertainment city movable. If the new world is chaotic, you can stop wandering in the new world and start traveling around the world, at the same time, attracting rich people from various countries. This approach can also effectively reduce their travel risks. We can definitely come to your door in person in one country and achieve multiple benefits with one stone," Tizalo said with a smile. Doflamingo's eyes also flashed with light. "If this is the case, it is indeed a very good idea. If it is not fixed, it can be mobile to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The new world, if things get messy, you can go to the 4 major sea areas of East, West, North, and South. Where can you make money without making money? And with the entertainment city model, it can completely diversify and develop, and even get involved in the tourism business around the world. In conjunction with the ups and downs of the world, industry opening a branch seems to be very promising. This guy Tetsalo is still very smart." Mobile floating island, Doflamingo touched his chin and murmured softly, very excited. "If it is made into an entertainment city model, it must be diversified, and it can completely include many businesses of the Avalon Dark Group. Even Happy Street and so on can be opened inside. However, this involves another issue, the influence of the Warhammer pirates. In the New World, naturally no one dares to blatantly cause trouble for this business. Because it is very few people can offend him, Orgrim. But if he leaves the New World, his influence and radiation will be greatly reduced. The sea areas in the outside world are the territory of the world government. This is really, I understand what you mean. Do you want Master Chui's help to communicate with the world government?" Doflamingo asked with a smile. "Yes, you must have thought about it, Dover. We can run rampant in the New World, but if we want to take this business to the whole world and make it bigger and stronger, we must cooperate with the world government. I think, if Mr. Hammer can agree with our idea on this matter, communicate with the world government, and establish the entertainment city as a kind of mobile neutral zone, then, this will be our absolute advantage over the rest of our peers. Once this core is achieved, it is impossible for us to lose in competition. Whether it is the Rain Feast in the first half of the Grand Line or the Gambalin Island in the New World, they will become a past tense and we can only eat the rest of our share," Tetsalo said excitedly. "Neutral zone," Doflamingo whispered softly. "My heart is very moved. The scene described by Tetsalo is indeed very valuable and feasible. Perhaps this entertainment city can become the second leg to support the Warhammer pirates in the future, breaking the economic dependence on the Avalon system and the Dark World. This is important. It is strategically important. With Orgrim's eyes, if he knew about this, it would be impossible for him not to realize the deeper meaning in it. The Avalon system is indeed a trustworthy plutocratic system. After all, they have the largest combined equity and the largest say. The Dark World, after the Dark Bank of Avalon is gradually implemented, can be considered completely in our hands. There shouldn't be any big risks. But making more preparations and fallback options is something that every major force will not refuse. If one day, the Avalon faction suffers a major blow, it will indeed have a great impact on the finances of the Warhammer pirates. For pirates, money is very important. Why is it that the Warhammer pirates are now so strong that they are overwhelming the big mom pirates? Always want to do some little tricks? It's because the Warhammer pirates are rich. You have no money, everyone is a pirate, they are out to fool around, and they are not doing charity. Who the hell would hang their head on their belt and fight for you? It is precisely because Avalon is rich that it can maintain such a huge system. Once this source of wealth is hit precisely and severely by some means, the larger the Warhammer Pirates system, the greater the impact will be. But what if there is a strong financial support that is not weaker than the Avalon system, then we can deal with these problems calmly, right? I don't think Mr. Chewie will refuse this. Doflamingo thought for a while and then said. He and Orgrim have known each other for many years, and they both made a fortune together from humble beginnings. Naturally, he knows Orgrim very well. He knows that Orgrim is very good at doing things. I never feel like there are too many ways to go. I have also been working hard to build a bigger, stronger, and more risk-resistant fundamentals. As long as the interests and risks are clearly explained, there is no reason for Orgrim to disagree with this kind of thing. Suddenly I remembered that when we were in Bihai, Mr. Chewie had promised the 5 old stars that if there was any benefit next time, he would be the first to get them. Furo Fura, isn't this good? I think even the 5 old stars would not refuse, of course, provided the benefits are guaranteed, Doflamingo said with a smile. If you want to create this kind of neutral zone, no matter how awesome Orgrim is, it will be useless day and night. Because this is decided jointly by multilateral forces, not you. If Orgrim says neutral, then you can be neutral. You also have to be recognized by others and pay attention to you. If you defeat the opponent or something, that's a paradox. You've already been defeated, but you still need a shitty neutral zone? Wouldn't it be nice to dance directly on his grave? As for the multilateral forces, to put it bluntly, the main body is the 2 forces, the pirates and the world government, and the rest, such as the Revolutionary Army, have almost no influence on this kind of thing. As for pirates, mainly in the New World, Doflamingo feels that Orgrim can still cover the scene here, so there is nothing to worry about. Then, the remaining party is the world government. Apart from the New World, most of the outside world is the domain of the world government. As long as the world government is taken care of, this so-called neutral zone will be fine. And if you want to get rid of the world government, then you definitely can't do it with nothing. The 5 old stars are not that mentally retarded. We must let the profits go, and let the big profits go out. Therefore, Doflamingo feels that if he really does this in the end, he should do it according to this idea. It is estimated that this is another mutual cooperation project similar to the sea train. If it is opened at 50-50, Orgrim will not agree, but at 40-60, it is almost the bottom line. The world government won't let this go easily, right? But there are good and bad things in this. After all, if the world government gets involved in this business, it will naturally be a shock to the rest of the world, who will do some small tricks or cause destruction. Those who are offended are not only the Warhammer pirates, but also the world government. There seems to be no one in this world who has the ability to live happily after offending Orgrim and the world government. How about it? Can it be done? My idea, Tizalo asked excitedly. Doflamingo laughed and said, you are really a talent. You can do it? I will work with you to propose it to Master Hammer. If this matter is true, if it's done, you will become a great hero. Mr. Chewie will inevitably take care of you in the future. Ha 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 ha, after your words, Dover, I felt relieved. Before, I was indeed a little worried. Tetsalo said with a smile. Phew phew phew, before that, Please come up with a detailed plan. Let's sort it out. We can't discuss this kind of issue with Mr. Zui in vain, Doflamingo arranged with a smile. No problem. The bank has been on track recently. I will take the time to make a detailed plan. Tizalo nodded without hesitation. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 514. Above the windless zone, a huge island is flying in the sky. Yes, this island is Nine Snakes Island. Boss Shiji finally arrived and flew towards the new world with Nine Snake Island effortlessly. Orgrim was standing on the edge of the island in a very happy mood, looking at the sea kings below his feet, one by one popping up and looking into the sky. It's been a long time since I experienced your ability, Boss Shiji, and you are still so powerful. Orgrim said with a smile. Shiji was standing next to Orgrim at this time, with a cigar in his mouth and a slightly comfortable expression. Do you know what I'm thinking? Shiki asked. Orgrim shook his head and said, Of course I don't know. Why should I study your mind? Wouldn't it be nice if I went and researched Hancock and Stussy? Gee ha 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 ha, I don't need to tell you more about the principles of Weenwen Township and the hero's tomb, right? Shiji said with a big smile. Of course not, Orgrim waved his hand. It is true that he likes beautiful women, but he has not reached the point of being obsessed with beauty. Shiji did not go to give Orgrim any big reasons, and said with a smile, I'm thinking, if I had planted my roots in a windless zone back then, maybe it would have been a different situation. Another scenario? Orgrim was confused for a moment, then he laughed with clarity and said, Yes, you're right. Sometimes, I also admire you for being able to abandon my territory without hesitation, plunge into the sea of eternal night, and choose Avalon as your core base. With the protection of the night, you can smoothly go through the period when you were the leader of a big force, the weakest period, and develop Avalon and the Warhammer pirates to what they are now. Shiji smiled and said. You went to Impelton for vacation. Without you to protect me, I will of course have to put my tail between my legs and be a human being for a while. Orgrim said with a smile. The Eternal Night Sea is a natural advantage for Orgrim. Now, Orgrim can say with great confidence that no one dares to stab him in the Eternal Night Sea. He can fight several masters at the same level. As for the Windless Belt, if you think about it from another angle, it seems to be the natural advantage of Shiji. Shiji was strong enough to stand at the top of the world. The only ones who can compete with him are Whitebeard and Roger. And Shiji's only weakness is the side effect of the Piao Piao fruit ability. It can be said that success is also a Piao Piao fruit, and failure is also a Piao Piao fruit. He is very afraid of the storm. Weather like strong winds. In that kind of climate, he can't even maintain his own stability, let alone exert any strength, otherwise he wouldn't have a rudder stuck on his head. And if there is no wind belt, the disadvantage was immediately filled up. There is no wind in the windless zone, and the climate is ridiculously stable all year round, not to mention the sudden formation of big storms like the adverse sea area. Don't even think about it. I thought, it's impossible. If Shiji could put his base in the windless zone, farm and develop in the windless zone, and then resolve conflicts and wars in the windless zone, he wouldn't be so unlucky. Of course. Now, all these are just hindsight. Shiji has no time to fuss with these anymore. He is now just waiting for his artificial ancient weapons plan to mature. In fact, this plan is also technically mature. With the full cooperation of Indigo, Nightingale, and Caesar, the technology matured a lot ahead of schedule, but due to the emergence of Orgrim, Shiji was not in a hurry to make big news. Therefore, he wanted to make more preparations, that is, to accumulate a larger number of monster evolutions. Even Orgrim felt that due to the birth of Andraste, Shiji's original ambitions were somewhat diminished. Perhaps this is the change in mentality after people grow old and have grandchildren, right? After you arrange Amazon Lily, are you ready to start a war? Shiji asked. There is such an intention, but there is no real plan. Orgrim nodded and said. What about the goal? Shiji asked. Tentatively, it's Charlotte Lingling and the Big Mom pirates. After all, she's the easiest to bully, but in fact, the one I want to fight the most is Newgate, but the risk is too great. I don't want to be a snipe and a clam fighting, with the fishermen taking advantage of the snipe and the clam, Orgrim said softly. The risk of beating Charlotte Lingling is not high. As long as you are prepared, it will not be a big problem. But if you fight Newgate, Orgrim is really worried about someone causing trouble. Don't he fought with Newgate and both sides lost, and then someone showed up and took advantage of the situation to rise, or maybe the Navy was doing some tricks in it. Shisharu glanced at Orgrim thoughtfully, and then said, if you can suppress your thoughts and wait a few more years, maybe, will there be big changes? Orgrim glanced at Shiji, then said with a smile, what, you old man want me to wait for you? Ha ha ha, this is the safest way, isn't it? Shiji said with a smile. Yes, it is very safe, but, I don't want to choose this path. I finally became a boss myself. There's no reason to come back under your wings, right? It'll be a joke, Orgrim waved his hand and said very naturally. Then if you ask me to do this for you now, no one will laugh at you. Shiji said a little funny. Of course, just give me a hand, that's the friendship between us, who can say anything. These are all small things. I can do it without you, but it's just a little more troublesome. But if you do what you just said, others will think that without you, Orgrim, can't reach the top, Orgrim said without hesitation. After a slight pause, Orgrim continued without waiting for Shiji to speak, so, I will definitely give the strongest to you before you step on this stage again. Sit firmly. Yeah? Do you believe that I will go to sea again tomorrow? Shiji suddenly said. Orgrim, who was still full of confidence, suddenly lost his expression, and said helplessly, do you want to play with me like this? Gee ha 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 ha, I just don't like seeing your little brat stinky fart. Shiki laughed. Just as the two of them were chatting about these topics after a long absence, and laughing a few times from time to time, Queen Stussy walked over from a distance with a graceful step, holding a phone in her hand. As for the insect, Queen Stussy has also been in a very happy mood these days. The originally explosive relationship with Hancock has eased a lot. Although they still have their own little thoughts and calculations, at least on the surface, it was already very harmonious. And Orgrim also respected Stussy. During this period, nothing really happened with Hancock, and he always maintained polite restraint. What's wrong? Orgrim looked at Stussy with a smile and asked. He reached out and rubbed her hair. Stussy pointed to the phone bug in his hand and said, it's Dover. He said that he wants to call me if there's anything he needs you discuss. Could it be that he is planning to imitate Amazon Lily and bring Dressrosa to the Sea of Eternal Night? Ha 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 ha, Orgrim smiled, then answered the phone and asked, my lord, how is my sister? Doflamingo was sitting in Dressrosa drinking coffee at this time. The phone bug is temporarily offline. Suddenly Orgrim's voice came over. And as soon as he asked this question, he felt a little pitter-patter in his heart. You really are not letting go of this matter, Doflamingo thought helplessly. But in fact, Doflamingo has not considered marrying Neiman. Because he is also a hero. According to the current development of the situation, when the King Shichibukai can no longer continue, Doflamingo will definitely take the Don Quixote family and merge into the Warhammer Pirates in one fell swoop. At that time, he will also need more chips to stabilize his position. And there is no doubt that Neiman is a very good choice. She is Orgrim's sister. If she marries Neiman, she will become Orgrim's brother. With Orgrim's character, it is absolutely impossible to treat him badly. Of course, even if there is no marriage, he should not be treated badly. But marriage is always beneficial. The only uncomfortable thing is that Doflamingo really can't accept Neiman's strong physique. If the two of them were lying on the same bed, Doflamingo wouldn't know how to tell who was messing with who. He might even feel like he's being gay. And he's still the weak one. No one can stand this. But the good news is that according to Doflamingo's observation, Neiman's aura has become increasingly unstable recently. As a man who has awakened his abilities, Doflamingo still has some experience in this area. He could see that Neiman was trying to attack his own bottleneck and wanted to awaken the muscle fruit. Doflamingo didn't know what the subsequent effect would be. But there should be a high probability that Neiman can completely master this fruit and perfectly control her muscles. By then, maybe Neiman will be able to regain her original figure and no longer look like a Barbie like she is now. To be honest, Doflamingo thinks that Neiman's face and appearance are definitely quite high-end, very beautiful and cute, and a top-notch beauty. That figure is so scary. The prettier the face, the more unacceptable it is. If his body could be restored, Doflamingo felt that he would be able to accept it. And the kind that makes money with blood. When the time comes, it is not impossible to reach a marriage with Neiman. It can be said that it is completely possible. Okay. However, when thinking about this problem, Doflamingo sometimes felt a touch of fear. That is, he found that after thinking about this problem, he occasionally had, even if Neiman doesn't recover, it's okay. I don't know if it's because they fell in love with each other over time, or for some other reason. Quickly get rid of all these messy thoughts in your mind. Doflamingo quickly said, it's okay, don't worry. Gee ha 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 ha, with your words, I feel relieved. My sister can be taken care of by you. Orgrim laughed and said. Although he knew what Orgrim was implying, Doflamingo couldn't refute anything. Because what Orgrim said was reasonable, on the surface, it was just the same. My sister is helping you, do you want to take care of me? Holding back this tone, Doflamingo did not bother with Orgrim and said directly, Master Hammer, Teazero has I agree with this idea. If we have time, we can meet and discuss it in detail. What idea? We have met too many times recently, right? Ha 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 ha, a little bit unlike you. Orgrim said with a smile. Gambling city, gaming industry, entertainment city, probably these. Doflamingo didn't pay attention to Orgrim's teasing and responded directly. Orgrim's side fell silent. Doflamingo was a little strange. Did I say something wrong? Before he could wait, wanting to understand, Orgrim said in a deep voice, okay, are you coming to Avalon? Or should I go to Dressrosa? Doflamingo said without hesitation, I'll go to Avalon. I haven't seen it for a while. Orgrim always felt a little strange. Could this kid be trying to avoid Neiman? Can I let you succeed? So Orgrim also smiled evilly and said, okay, let's meet in Avalon. Doflamingo was relieved when he heard this, and a smile appeared on his lips, but he didn't wait for him to speak. Then I heard Orgrim say again, oh, I haven't seen my sister for a long time. I miss her a little. Anyway, she is your secretary now. When you come back to Avalon, don't forget to take Neiman with you. I'm crazy, Doflamingo almost cursed in his heart. Are you waiting for me? Why don't you push me so hard? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 515. The Holy Land of Marijoya on the Red Continent is located at the port on the New World side. A naval warship with a rabbit-marked sail was slowly approaching the port. Not long after, when the warship stabilized, a large group of Navy soldiers quickly disembarked from the warship. Compared with the elite Navy of the headquarters, their momentum is more fierce, and they don't even look like a navy, but a bit like pirates. This group of Marines is the elite of G-5. In terms of combat effectiveness, it may be more powerful than the Marine headquarters in Marineford. They are the soldiers of Jun. After these Navy came down, they quickly began to take over the garrison force in the small area of the port, and then disperse the crowd in the port. Within a moment, this area of the port became quiet. Not long after, Jun, wearing the cloak of justice and the epaulets of a lieutenant general, slowly walked down the ladder of the warship. Behind her, there was a mysterious figure whose face and figure could not be seen clearly. The whole body was shrouded in a black robe. "Here we go," Chop Suey Jun's face looked a little cold and he said not very politely. The mysterious figure smiled and said, "This is really unladylike. Take my advice and go back to Marineford to be your candidate general. If you continue to hang out in G-5, I'm afraid you won't be able to get married in the future. This is not something you should worry about, Orgrim. People who want to chase me can line up from Marineford to Marijoya and fill up the trench," Jun said with a somewhat unhappy tone. Yes, this mysterious figure is none other than the captain of the Warhammer pirates, the pirate emperor of the New World, and the king of the Night of Avalon, Khazgaroz Og. Rem. What is very shocking is that he actually came to Marijoya, the holy land of the world government, in a car from G-5 Naval Base Nagajun in the New World. If this news spreads, it will definitely cause a huge earthquake. The influence caused the whole world to be in an uproar. Should good intentions be regarded as a donkey's liver and lungs? Orgrim joked with a smile, and before Jun could speak, he continued, "But it doesn't matter. Since this warship trip makes me feel happy, I forgive you very generously." "That's disrespectful, Jun, Lieutenant General." Listening to Orgrim's special emphasis on the word Lieutenant General, Jun felt very unhappy. But there was nothing she could do. After all, with her current status, she seemed very beautiful, but in front of Orgrim, somewhat embarrassing. Especially, this time Orgrim is coming to meet the 5 old stars. And as the highest authority of the world government, he personally invited Orgrim to meet in Marijoya. G-5 The Navy performs political missions of secret escort. In Jun's heart, there are 10,000 alpacas running wildly, shuttling back and forth. There are countless sentences of Mom Sells batches to be said, but I just have to hold them in. Don't be too proud. You will have the opportunity to ride on a warship in the future. When the time comes, I will personally shackle you, Jun threatened with an angry tone. Gee ha 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 ha, it depends on your ability, but you are right about one thing, that is, I still have a chance to ride on a warship. You said, when I leave, stress that I need you to escort me back to Ava. Long, will Willaoxing agree to my modest request? Orgrim said with a smile. After saying that, he ignored Jun and stepped onto the port. Looking at Orgrim's arrogant and proud back, Jun's eyes flashed with anger, and he wished he could kill Orgrim with a knife here. But as a navy, she can't do anything. She can only watch this man, who is known as the most evil pirate in the history of the world, acting unscrupulously. Justice, Jun murmured with a dim look in his eyes, but finally shook his head and followed. When he left the port, he saw a Navy marshal who looked like he had eaten stinky dog shit and had a bitter expression on his face, standing there waiting for him. That's right, there is only one marshal in the Navy, and this person is naturally Orgrim's good brother, Marshal Sengoku. I saw the Marshal Sengoku from a distance, and how disgusting his expression was. The look on Orgrim's face, what a brilliant smile. Gee ha 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 ha, brother Warring States period, long time no see. How have you been recently? I really envy you. You can come to a great place like Marijoa. A holy place is a holy land. The scenery is pleasant and the climate is mild. I don't want to leave even after I'm here. I was in such a hurry last time that I didn't even get to see Marijoa. What a beautiful scenery. This time you have to treat me well as an old friend. When I finish talking to Willaoxing, remember to be my guide. Let me think about it. I really liked the moving walk last time I came here, I pushed it on the bottom. This time I want to go up and stand. Is there no problem, Orgrim stepped forward with a warm and friendly look on his face, grabbed the arm of the naval marshal Sengoku, and shook it vigorously. Looking at his appearance, he looked like he had a close relationship with the two Sengoku brothers. We carried guns together and went whoring together, ahem, that kind of relationship. Of course, the premise is not to look at the face of the Warring States Marshal. At this time, Warring States felt extremely sick, making him want to vomit just looking at Orgrim. You clearly know that this person is your lifelong enemy, and you can't help but want to slap him to death, but you can't do this. Moreover, this guy looked so enthusiastic when he came up, which made Warring States sick even more. I am a great naval marshal, and I have never collaborated with pirates, especially a despicable and evil bastard like you. Don't come up and say we're familiar, okay? Still, brother? Are I the same generation as you? But thinking of this, Warring States felt a little aggrieved. Although he and Orgrim were not heroes of the same era, Orgrim was one of his main opponents now. The two of them are on the same level. This bastard called him Warring States brother, and he really couldn't refute it. I don't have much time to spend with you here. Once I take you to meet those 5 people, you can just take care of yourself, Warring States said in a somewhat stiff tone. Orgrim put on an expression of unacceptable expression and said heartbrokenly, why is this? Are you so busy? After all, you are also a marshal of the Navy. The superiors work hard, but you must not micromanage everything. That will be too much. Take my advice and don't take it too seriously. No matter how good you are in the Navy is not your family. Just mean it. Is Wulaoxing oppressing your labor force? How is this possible? You have to stand up. Shivering. As a member of the proletariat, I, Orgrim, hate this kind of bottomless and immoral exploitative behavior the most. If you ask me, you, the marshal, don't do it. Go ahead and don't go see those 5. You are no longer a heartless guy. Come back to the New World with me, come back to Avalon with me, and I will arrange a good place for you. How about Field Marshal of Avalon? Don't worry, I have 5 insurances and 1 fund, 2 weekends off, and normal holidays. If you work overtime, I'll give you 3 times your salary. I'm a very conscientious person. Who doesn't know that in the New World? Orgrim said while grabbing Sengoku's arm and pulling him out. Sengoku was stunned. He had had many contacts with Orgrim, but every time he came into contact, he was serious. The opposing side. This is the first time I have encountered a scene like this. Although I have long known that Orgrim, a bastard, has no moral integrity at all on some levels, does not look like a boss at all, and has almost no face. But today it is official. When he understood it, it still made Warring States in agony. This bastard was so damn good at beeping. If I said anything casually, he would hit the snake with a stick, and he would be chirping endlessly. And he wanted to persuade him. If I resign as Marshal of the Navy, why should I go to Avalon to become a Field Marshal? Do you have an army with a hammer in Avalon? Even if it does, I am mentally ill in the Warring States period. I want to give up a good future and become a pirate with you. I hate it in my heart. With his teeth itching, the golden light on the Sengoku Grand Marshal's hand flickered in and out. He suppressed a surge of anger, fearing that he would not be able to hold it back for a while and start a fight with Orgrim. Not far away, Jun was also stunned. When he came back to his senses and looked at the bitter expression of his Sengoku Marshal, Jun almost couldn't help but laugh out loud. On the way, he felt that Orgrim was very annoying, but maybe he still had some gentlemanly, he didn't really pester and disgust himself. At this time, Orgrim showed all his skills to the Generalissimo of the Warring States period. Enough, Warring States couldn't help it anymore and shouted violently. Orgrim was also startled by him and couldn't help but let go of his arm. What are you doing? I invite you with good intentions. Even if you don't want to go, you should decline politely and express a little apology. That would be polite, right? After all, you are also a marshal of the navy. It is very embarrassing for you to go out like this, Orgrim muttered. The Warring States Marshal's face twitched and he gritted his teeth and said, I don't need to tell you any etiquette as a pirate. Stop chattering here. Orgrim, do you still want to see the 5 old stars? It was only then that Orgrim's face straightened. He reached out and patted the Warring States Marshal on the shoulder, and said with an evil smile, is this unbearable? Then go back and practice more, and we will have many opportunities to meet in the future. Woolen Cloth, Marshal of the Warring States period, sir, he. A dark look flashed in Marshal Warring States' eyes. He knew that Orgrim was deliberately embarrassing and disgusting him. Maybe it's revenge? I don't know what you are taking revenge for. Arrange for the red-haired one to join the king's Shichibukai. Or say something else. Don't be too proud, Orgrim, our navy has prepared many surprises for you. Marshal Warring States also reached out and patted Orgrim on the shoulder. Gee ha 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 ha, I'm looking forward to it, Orgrim laughed and said. After saying that, Orgrim stretched his body and said nonchalantly, what a pity. I don't know when your navy will be able to complete the 7 kings. Woo-ha. Do you want me to recommend another one? You say, what about Boya Hancock? Very suitable, right? Gee ha 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 ha. The Warring States Marshal snorted coldly, knowing that in this matter, he was already slightly inferior. No matter how much he said, he could not defeat Orgrim, a master of words. So after snorting coldly, the Warring States Marshal turned around and walked towards Marie Joanne. Orgrim shrugged, smiled, looked at Jun and said, is your marshal so boring that he can't even take a joke? Sometimes, I wonder, don't you feel ashamed? Jun glanced at Orgrim with contempt. Orgrim said matter-of-factly, as a pirate, why should I be ashamed of this kind of thing? It's you, don't you feel ashamed? What am I ashamed of? Jun frowned and asked a little unhappily. Of course, it's shameful that a person like me can openly embark on Marijoa in front of your navy, ha 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 ha. Orgrim laughed loudly and walked towards Marshal Sengoku without looking back. Jun's white palm rested on Jinpura at his waist, and his eyes flashed with anger. Looking at Orgrim's back, he murmured in a low voice, of course it's shameful. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 516. As a pirate of Orgrim, even if he is wearing a black robe to hide his figure, it is still impossible for him to go through any serious channels to meet Wulaoxing. Sengoku, this guy, walked in front with Orgrim without saying a word, twisting and turning in front of the headquarters building of the world government. Orgrim once sent a shockwave towards this building from Pongal Castle, but it seemed to be stopped by someone from the CP agency. At that time, he actually didn't pay much attention to it. I just think this building is a bit conspicuous. Now take a closer look. Should it be said that it is one of the core buildings of the world government? I can't tell how many floors there are, but it's quite high anyway. It is the tallest building Orgrim has ever seen in the world. The whole thing looks very solemn and solemn. You can see many people wearing suits, walking in and out like dogs, looking very busy. At this time, the Warring States Marshal's expression was also serious, and his eyes would look at Orgrim from time to time, looking very wary. I'm afraid that this bastard will get interested and blow up the building. Then it would really be a big mess, and the world would be in turmoil. In fact, it was not just Sengoku, the naval marshal, who was guarding against Orgrim. Why wasn't Orgrim guarding against him? Although Wulaoxing personally invited him to be a guest, Orgrim also felt that there was a high probability that the 5 old stars would not cause any trouble. But no one can say for sure, will these guys set up a trap in Marijoya on a whim and find 17 or 8 top experts to ambush him? So don't look at Orgrim's careless appearance on the surface. In fact, he has been very vigilant. And even though they came on a warship, there were some follow-up arrangements, but I just hoped they wouldn't be used. Provoking warring states just now was considered a test. But there seems to be no problem. Anyway, don't be too careless. Sengoku and Jun, one on the left and one on the right, protected Orgrim, a mysterious guy, as they walked into the headquarters building. There were indeed some people who curiously observed the three of them. But no one came up to ask anything. On the one hand, Sengoku's identity is here. As a naval marshal, he has a very high status even in the core building of this world government. It is impossible for ordinary people to be qualified to teach him how to do things. On the other hand, the people who work here are all real people and know what to be curious about and what not to be curious about. Sometimes, the more you know, the quicker you die. The Navy Marshal came here with a mysterious person, and it was obvious that he had a big secret. Now I don't know whether to live or die. If I go up and ask what's going on, I'm afraid my body will be buried in the sea at night. No one harassed him, and soon Sengoku took Orgrim to a remote place where there was a dedicated elevator. Warring States took out a card from his arms and swiped it on the elevator's sensor before unlocking the elevator. Orgrim gave this guy a funny look, and then followed him into the elevator. Jun stopped here. She was not qualified to participate in what happened next. The Warring States Marshal nodded to her, and then pressed the only button in the elevator. As soon as the door closed, the elevator began to rise toward the upper floor. Neither of them spoke. The more they were in such a confined space, the more depressing and tense the atmosphere became. Ayanko, a naval marshal. It's impossible for you to be good to me and my good brothers to be good, right? There was a soft ding. When the floor arrived, Orgrim and Marshal Warring States looked at each other, and they seemed to see a hint of relaxation in their eyes. Follow me, Marshal Warring States said softly. Orgrim did not speak, but followed his footsteps. From this remote corner, he turned a few corners and finally came to an office with a closed door. No, he had been here before, but Orgrim was very sure that this should be the office of the Five Old Stars, the decision-making center for the operation of the behemoth world government. He also saw that there were two elevators not far away. There should be. It's a regular elevator, right? There is something special about him after all. Marshal Warring States stood in front of the door, stretched out his hand and knocked on the door. Not long after, a sound of "come in" came from inside. Marshal Warring States then opened the door. Walked in. And Orgrim also had a smile on his lips, without any sense of stage fright, and followed in carelessly. As soon as he entered the door, as expected, he saw the Five Old Stars sitting on a sofa. It was as if Orgrim was waiting for him. That posture was indeed very impressive. He looked like five big bosses at a glance. Orgrim no longer had to be secretive at this time, and he took out the mysterious clothes on his body. The black robe was torn off and thrown on the hanger at the door. He moved his neck a little, and his strong body gave off an unruly aura. Haven't seen you for a long time. Orgrim waved his hands to the Five Old Stars very casually, but he didn't see the playful smile he had during the Warring States period. He knew very well what kind of people he should treat and what attitude he should treat. No matter how much he goes too far towards the Warring States period, as long as there is no Warring States could only hold back the substantial threat. But it was different for Wulaoxing. Wulaoxing and him were truly on the same level. What's more, this time it was for cooperation, so there was no need. Wouldn't it embarrass the other party? It's been a long time indeed. Orgrim. The Five Old Stars didn't have a sullen face, and smiled at Orgrim. Orgrim walked to an empty sofa with a smile, and casually took off the warhammer he was carrying behind him. His actions also made the Five Old Stars' eyelids twitch a little, fearing that this bastard would hit him. Marshal Waring State's palm also tightened and clenched into a fist. Logically speaking, no matter who it is, come if you meet the 5 old stars, it is impossible for them to carry any weapons. Not even daggers, let alone someone like Orgrim who comes with a warhammer on his back. But no one dares to collect Orgrim's warhammer. How can I accept this? How can I open my mouth again? Fortunately, Orgrim did not make any extraordinary move, and said with a smile, "Don't be nervous, I came here with sincerity." As he finished speaking, he placed the war hammer in his hand on the ground, with the hammer handle leaning against the sofa. Then, he sat on the sofa with great dignity, as if he was the master of this place. "Who is that? I am a guest after all. How about a cup of tea? Would you like a little wink?" Orgrim looked at Waring States and said with a smile. A flash of anger flashed in Marshal Waring States' eyes, and the 5 old stars also spoke at this time. "Waring States, are you tired? That guy Cyborg has been talking about you recently. Now that you're here, you can go and sit at his place." It's impossible for the 5 old stars to really disgrace the naval marshal Sengoku here and ask him to pour tea for Orgrim or something. That would be too much. But they also know that Orgrim is in a subtle way, let Sengoku have nothing to do and stop wandering around here. It's an eyesore. The Generalissimo of Sengoku is actually very curious in his heart. I wonder what the bastard Orgrim wants to talk to the 5 old stars? Why are the 5 old stars? It will be like formal? And specifically invited him to come to Marijoya? But the 5 old stars didn't say that it was really not suitable for them to stay here at this time. What if Orgrim, the bastard, really held on to him and asked him to pour tea? Then do you still want the face of your marshal? With Orgrim's shameless integrity, he would most likely blow this matter out. Therefore, the Waring States marshal nodded to the 5 old stars and said, "Yes, 5 adults, I am downstairs. If you need anything, please give me orders at any time." There is no doubt that Waring States is also giving Orgrim a secret express a message. Don't be too presumptuous, kid. There are at least 3 top experts downstairs. Jun, himself, and the Commander-in-Chief of the World Government's Army, Cyborg Sara. If you really have any bad intentions here, I will keep you from getting out of Marijoya. Orgrim didn't know whether he understood or not. He smiled and said to Waring States, "Help me say hello to Commander Cyborg and ask him to have tea another day." Marshal Waring States was a little embarrassed. He twitched, ignored the bastard Orgrim, nodded again to the 5 old stars, opened the door and walked out. After waiting for the door to be closed, the bald king seemed not to be wary of Orgrim at all. With a smile on his face, he stood up, took out a new teacup himself, poured a cup for Orgrim from the teapot, and placed it on Orgrim's table. On the table in front of Grim, at the same time, he sat down next to Orgrim. At this time, Orgrim was also a little surprised at the magnanimity of the 5 old stars, but he did not appear to be unruly. That was really too low level. He smiled and nodded to the bald king, and said in a very gentle and formal tone, "Thank you for the hospitality." "You're welcome, you have the qualifications," the bald king said with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out 2 cigars from his arms, both of which had been cut. He handed one to Orgrim and said, "I heard that you don't like drinking, but you like to taste it. This. Give it a try. What a good thing, specially provided for us." Orgrim took it with a smile and said, "I'm flattered. I'm a little embarrassed that you've done this." There was no politeness at all, and he bit it directly on his mouth. Then, Orgrim took out a lighter from his pocket. This time, he lit the fire first and handed it to the bald king. The bald king didn't mind anything. He chewed his cigar and let Orgrim light a fire for him. Then Orgrim lit his cigar. This back and forth, to be honest, really doesn't look like the leader of the world government and the pirate emperor, but rather feels like two gangster brothers. Putting away the lighter, Orgrim exhaled a breath of smoke and said, "It is indeed a good thing. I like the taste very much." The blond man opened his mouth at the right time and said with a smile, "As long as you like it, take more with you when you leave." Gee, ha 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 ha, then I won't be polite. I'm really ashamed. I didn't expect you to be so enthusiastic. I didn't prepare any gifts when I came, which was a bit rude, Orgrim said with a slightly ashamed expression. The 5 old stars didn't care about this. They just said that your people are here, which is our biggest gift. For a time, the highest official in the world government power, I had a very happy chat with Orgrim, the evil tycoon in the pirate camp. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Ha 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 ha, right? Did we really not expect that guy with white beard to do charity? The bearded 5 old stars said with a smile. When I first learned about it, I was shocked. After a long investigation, I confirmed this fact. On the surface, the old guy is a pirate, but secretly he is really a philanthropist, Orgrim said with a smile. Without getting into the main topic directly, several people sat together, some of them were like old friends, chatting about some interesting things and gossip about the sea. From time to time, you can hear laughter. It wasn't until he saw that the atmosphere was almost over that the bald king slowly exhaled a puff of smoke, picked up the teacup, took a sip, and then asked very naturally, "By the way, Orgrim, you came this time, what did you say? What is the big deal we are talking about? What? Are you planning to let us buy shares in your bank?" Orgrim smiled, took a sip from his teacup, and said, "Stop staring at my pocket. How about 3 melons and 2 dates? How about opening up a new business?" After a short pause, before Wulaoxing and the others could ask again, Orgrim said softly, "Boss, entertainment cities, are you interested in business?" When the 5 old stars heard this, their expressions were a little strange. "That's it? Is this the big business you, the king of the night, talk about? Is that all you came all the way here to talk to us in person?" A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 517. Downstairs of Wulaoxing's office. In Commander Cyborg's office, Generalissimo Jun and Sengoku are sitting here, talking to Commander Cyborg. "It's such a shame to allow pirates to board Marijoya openly and be escorted by our navy," Jun said with some annoyance. Although Marshal Sengoku was also disgusted with that bastard Orgrim, he was not as excited as Jun. "Commander, have you received any news? What on earth did Orgrim come to talk to those 5 people about? I always feel, is there something bad?" Jean Kuyuan couldn't help but ask. "Is it bad? Of course it's not good." Ren Ren looked at his opponents and enemies, and his relationship with his immediate boss seemed to be getting better and better. They even made an appointment to drink tea and chat together. Everyone will feel bad, right? Although there are no signs of it yet, the closer the contact between Orgrim and the 5 old stars, the more constraints their navy will have in the future. Commander Cyborg shouted. He took a sip of tea, then shook his head and said, "I'm not sure. I asked a few questions, but the 5 old stars didn't mean to say anything. Not long ago, Orgrim and Shiji transferred Amazon Lily's 9 Snakes Island brought into the New World and arranged next to the Avalon Islands. Don Quixote da Flamingo rushed from Dressrosa to Avalon. On the 3rd day after that, Jun was ordered to go to Avalon in the Sea of Eternal Night, to escort Orgrim to Marijoya. I think if anything happens, it's nothing more than Amazon Lily or da Flamingo. Yes, it has been a long time since the conflict between 9 Snake Island and Polusalino. Orgrim has roughly arranged Amazon Lily, and it depends on what problems will arise in the subsequent integration. If there are problems, they will be solved." Not long after he returned to Avalon with Shiki, da Flamingo arrived. "Of course, I did bring Neiman with me." Afterwards, da Flamingo and Orgrim had a detailed discussion about the neutral entertainment city. And Orgrim also read Tzalo's detailed plan. Very interesting. But it's just a start. Doflamingo felt that maybe Orgrim would use this matter to cooperate with the world government and make a lot of money together. That's right. Orgrim believes that this matter may be a new level that can create a sufficient trust foundation for him and the five old stars in a real sense. The previous cooperation was just verbal cooperation, with some tacit understanding and so on. After Fervan's Platinum Lead Futures speculation ended, it has no particular practical significance. If you really want to count, the Sea Train cooperation project is one of them. At present, Sea Train has begun to establish engineering projects on many islands in the Yonjai Sea. This can also be regarded as a pilot, once the Evernight Sea is completely connected. The world government must begin to increase investment and establish engineering projects in the remaining sea areas. Orgrim doesn't intend to stop them either. However, although the political significance of the Hate Rain project is great, its real gold content: how can an entertainment city make money? The Entertainment City project is the real big deal. Once achieved, the world government and Orgrim will benefit a lot from it every year. Cooperating with the Sea Train project will be a real bundle of interests. Very big benefit bundle. And this kind of bundling of interests can naturally build a sufficient foundation of trust. This allows both parties to feel more at ease with each other. At this point, Orgrim can truly have a deeper discussion with the five old stars. Exploring some private issues is no longer a matter of macro interest for the world government. For example, we can talk about the mysterious Lord Im. This is the true tacit understanding between Orgrim and the five old stars. Otherwise, the five old stars would not have directly invited Orgrim to Marijoya as a guest without even asking when they heard about big business. Because they probably also sensed the opportunity. As for Orgrim, if it is really an entertainment city business, no matter how big it is, as long as the details are finalized, there is no need to meet with the five old stars, and the phone can be agreed. But the invitation from the five old stars also made Orgrim understand that the five old stars might already be interested in making a move. So he took a risk and decided to meet these five bad old men. Amazon Lily, the Warring States Marshal, murmured, then shook his head and said it may be important, but it is not important enough that Orgrim needs to meet the five old stars in person, let alone be invited by the five old stars. In other words, the most likely possibility is Doflamingo. That guy used to be a celestial dragon? Orgrim wouldn't have gotten any secrets from him, threatening the five old stars and the world government, right? Jun couldn't help but ask. Marshal Sengoku shook his head and said, probably not. Orgrim is not such a reckless person. The fact that he has a close relationship with Doflamingo has already been revealed. For many years, even if they had to suspect something, the five old stars would probably have suspected that Orgrim knew something that they shouldn't know, but weren't they hooking up before? And, threats and secrets, it only has a deterrent effect when it's not in use. But when you take it out and say it, it's actually not easy to use. Don't worry, on some fundamental issues, it is impossible for the five old stars to be restrained and threatened by Orgrim. You don't need to think too much about this, Commander Cyborg said without hesitation. The closer he gets to Wulaoxing, the more he understands that Wulaoxing is also a very strong person, and he is a person who wants to do practical things. Unlike the ordinary garbage, the Dracos are different, even if the situation really reaches the point where they have to be cruel. The five old stars may be the first to start cleaning up the Dracos on Marijoya. Of course, these are Cyborg's private speculations, and there is no solid evidence. But Cyborg can still be sure that the position of the five old stars is very firm. They want to repair the rotten ship of the world government. Therefore, on some fundamental issues, it is impossible for the five old stars to negotiate with Ogre this kind of pirate compromise or something. If you think about it this way, there is a high probability that Orgrim is going to enter some new industry. In the past few years, He has become more like a businessman than a pirate. Marshal Waring States thought for a while and then spoke. Here Marshal Waring States and others were chatting about these things. Upstairs, Orgrim also started to explain with a smile. Don't get me wrong, I have no intention of making a fuss. Here is a plan. You can take a look at it first. If you are interested, we can talk about it later. Orgrim said with a smile, then took out a plan from his arms and handed it to the bald king beside him. The bald king glanced at Orgrim, but didn't say anything else. He took it over and flipped through 2 pages. Next. I have to say that Tetsalo's plan is quite tempting. After all, his original intention at the time was to persuade Orgrim to approve his plan. Therefore, the prospects depicted in it are it's pretty good. The various details and supplements listed, as well as the specific steps, are all very complete. If it can impress Orgrim, it will naturally be attractive to the 5 old stars. The bald king took a look at it. The originally indifferent expression turned serious. How can this gambling industry, entertainment city be casually described? Orgrim is clearly planning to build a mobile money attracting tool. This is really, what a big deal, the bald king said with some emotion. At the same time, he handed the plan book in his hand to the other 5 old stars. The 4 took turns to read it, and they all looked surprised and didn't expect it. How about it? Still pretty good, right? The business is huge. If it really gets going, if it becomes prosperous, monopolizes the upstream and sinks the downstream, the profit it can bring every year, I'm afraid it's an astronomical number, but there are many. We all need to pay attention to it. More importantly, this thing has a very good function, Orgrim smiled and said. Money laundering, the bald king said without hesitation. He didn't hide anything. Orgrim grinned and said with an evil smile, that's right, this is the function. To be honest, I don't have any use for it. After all, I am a pirate. No matter how good the money in my hand is, it cannot be called free, but you are different. In fact, the world government also has many shady channels to make money. It can even be said that Fravan's previous platinum and lead business was a very shady channel. Later, the world government spent this astronomical sum of money by acquiring the industrial pillar economies of the countries in the North Sea. It's like laundering the money in disguise. In addition to these, every year, the world government actually spends a lot of energy to arrange the shady illegal gains in its hands into reasonable and legal income. That's not to say that the world government is being hypocritical. After all, if they don't cover up, no one seems to be able to really control whether their money comes from a legitimate source. But they still have to sit up straight. After all, they are not pirates like Orgrim and have nothing to worry about. In the final analysis, the world government has always followed the words legal rationality. No matter how dirty things are behind the scenes, on the surface, they must act reasonable and legal. Just like the matter of slaves, it was obvious that Marijoa had a lot of slaves, which was a clear violation of the law. If you insist on saying so, except for the Tianlong people who have the power to be exempted from the law, these are untenable for the rest of the people, especially the automatic walking trails. But the world government, from beginning to end, never admitted that there were any slaves in Marijoa. The 2 slave riots were defined as riots caused by ordinary people. The country that builds bridges simply uses the excuse of criminals serving their sentences. In short, no matter how ugly it is, even if the whole world knows it, the superficial work is done anyway. After all, the most fundamental purpose of today's laws is to maintain the rule of the world government. If the world government shows a taking the lead in breaking the law posture, the majesty of the law will quickly collapse, and the order of the world will further fall into chaos. Money laundering is the same thing. Previously, the world government did not have a unified channel to completely do this kind of thing. And now, if this entertainment city in the neutral zone is established, then they don't have to worry about these things in the future. All the Baileys earned through shady channels can become reasonable and legal dividend benefits and enter the pockets of the world government as long as they take a walk in the entertainment city. Isn't this convenient? Therefore, for the world government, this is not only a business that can make a lot of money, but also a business that can help them solve a lot of troubles. You are right, I do have a lot of Baileys every year, and they need to be cleaned before they can be used. In the past, this was very troublesome, but if we have this entertainment city, when the bald king said this, he smiled and said, that will be much more convenient. Gee ha 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 ha, yes. Orgrim laughed. In short, your project seems to be very reliable. If we really want to cooperate, it is not impossible. But although our relationship with Orgrim is getting closer, we still need to settle the accounts clearly. How much are you going to leave us? The bearded man asked. Orgrim smiled and said directly, I don't want to bother with you. When we are at this point, struggling with these issues, some prices will drop, just treat it as what I brought to you. Gifts, the old rule, 4 to 6 points, 6 for me, 4 for you. Once it's up and running, you don't have to worry about operational matters at all. You can just send someone who can do accounting to the finance department to supervise the funds and wait for dividends. Not bad, right? The 5 old stars looked at each other. 4 or 6 points should indeed be Orgrim's bottom line. He didn't say any nonsense, and directly showed the bottom line, which also represents sincerity. Even if he said it was a gift, it didn't matter. Wrong. The 5 old stars did not negotiate any price with Orgrim, and immediately said, okay, let's do it according to this. I have been on a business trip in Beijing in the past few days and have been quite busy. I will stop updating for a few days. I will try to write down all the 4 basic updates every day. Please forgive me, everyone, thank you. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 518. With Orgrim and the world government funding and promoting it behind the scenes, this entertainment city in the neutral zone will inevitably be more powerful than Tezero's own. It can completely push Tetsalo to the position of the richest man in the world. But it's such a big business. 5 old stars and Orgrim just took out the plan, looked at it, and discussed it casually. Within minutes, it was finalized. It is conceivable that Tetsalo's title as the world's richest man is only superficial. In the eyes of these 6 big guys, it's just a business that can make money and make it easier to launder money. I haven't finished smoking this cigar yet. After saying this, Orgrim stood up and walked to the window. The 5 old stars didn't care about him. They all drank tea and chatted when they should. Looking out from the one-way transparent floor-to-ceiling windows, you can overlook the entire Marijo. Even if it is the residence of the celestial dragons known as the residence of gods. After looking around for a moment, I could see that even after 2 slave riots, they still remained stubborn, riding on slaves and strolling around Marijoya. The traces of the fire that year have completely disappeared. Marijoa's appearance is bright and beautiful. Standing here, I feel like I'm standing in the center of the world. Powerful, Orgrim smiled and murmured with some emotion. Do you like the scenery? The bald king held a teacup in his hand and walked to Orgrim's side. He also looked out the window and asked with a smile. Of course, the scenery is very nice, and the smell of power is rushing towards your face. Trampling the Holy Land under your feet, maybe it means trampling the world under your feet, right? Orgrim didn't hide anything and said very naturally. If you like, you can come and sit often. The bald king smiled and said. Gee ha 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 ha, forget it, although I like it, this kind of scenery will definitely not belong to me. Compared with it, to me, the dark night of Avalon seems more charming. Orgrim waved his hand, exhaled a puff of smoke, and said very casually. On the contrary, if this represents the positive side of the world, you, Avalon, represent the negative side of the world, presumably the scenery there should be no less than here, the bald king also said with some emotion. He is right. Although Marijoa is extremely dirty and dark and inhumane. But after all, Marijoa represents the positive side of the world and represents the so-called light and order. And Avalon, over the years, has firmly established itself as the dark holy land. There is no doubt that it represents the opposite of the world, the so-called darkness and chaos. This world is what it is. Order and chaos, darkness and light are intertwined. So it's impossible to say which one is more beautiful, the scenery of Avalon or the scenery of Marijoa. Each has its own style. Curious? Out of curiosity, can you come back with me as a guest? Make sure you are arranged comfortably. Orgrim said with a smile. The bald king also laughed and waved his hand. No need, just as you said, the scenery here does not belong to you, the scenery in Avalon will not belong to us. We all have our own positions and persistence. You're right. Orgrim nodded in approval. The two were silent for a while, and the bald king suddenly said with a sigh, we have always regretted it. If we had noticed you many years ago, we would have brought you over, or even give you the identity of a celestial dragon. Maybe the world will become more different. The identity of a celestial dragon. Yes, this thing can be considered a given. To put it simply, it is a marriage. In the long history, the world government has indeed used this method more than once to attract outstanding people. Talent became a celestial dragon, and became one of our own in the true sense. Later, the king of the Goa kingdom in the East China Sea, who was Sabo's younger brother, once asked Garp how to become a celestial dragon. Garp's answer at that time, not surprised by the answer, impossible. It's that kind of trash you want to be. This already represents some answers. Of course, this kind of thing must be an exception, and you must be very special. Excellent, so outstanding that even the highest authority like the 5 old stars can be moved. Most of the Tianlong people are internally married, this family, marry into that family and so on. This is the norm. As for after marrying into the family, whether you will disappear into the crowd and become one of those celestial dragons who are just waiting to die, or whether you will gain further control over power, depends on your attitude towards you and your own abilities. What the bald king said at this time was also true. The 5 old stars really regretted allowing talents like Orgrim to become their enemies. If they could have noticed him earlier, they might have absorbed him as a Draco. I heard that his son, the little guy named Andrest, seems to have inherited Orgrim's powerful physique. This shows that Orgrim's bloodline is also quite good. If it can be spread among the Draco class, going out is also a very valuable thing. Ha 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 ha, Orgrim laughed. He had no regrets. The Draco, he, who is young and new to this world, might be very interested. But now, he has long been accustomed to his identity as a pirate. Even if Wulaoxing forcibly gives him the identity of Tianlong now, he won't care. Maybe there will be a big change. If I were really a celestial dragon, Durag would be dead by now, Orgrim said with a slightly cruel tone. The butt determines the head, and Orgrim will now secretly support Durag with some supplies. That's because he needs Durag. When he doesn't, they would still kick them away or even kill them. If Orgrim were a Draco, he would never give Durag the chance to form a revolutionary army. Even if he was the son of the hero Garp, he would still find someone. If you have the opportunity, kill when you should. No matter how awesome you are, as long as you are in the world government system, can you be more awesome than me, the Tianlong people? The bald king turned his head and glanced at Orgrim, with a hint of meaning in his eyes. But Orgrim didn't pay attention and continued to speak. But this is fate. The strong always seem to naturally go into opposition. This is the law and is reasonable, because we are not willing to bow to others, but it is also right. Because of this, the world is so beautiful and cruel. You're right, the bald king responded softly, and then repeated it again as if it was natural and unintentional. Yes, we are not willing to bow to others. The other 4-5 old stars who were drinking tea also fell silent for a moment and looked towards Orgrim and the others. A slightly evil smile appeared on the corner of Orgrim's mouth, and he slowly exhaled a puff of smoke and said softly but many times, "We can't help it. In the early years, didn't I also find Boss Shiji, asylum? You should be more open-minded about this kind of thing." The bald king's expression was a little unnatural, with a somewhat complicated feeling. Then, he took up Orgrim's words and said, "Of course you are lucky, because you are very young, Orgrim, Shiki, although he is not bad, he will grow old after all. Have you ever thought about what would happen to you if Shiji had an endless lifespan?" "Gee ha 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 ha, then I will not choose Shiji at all, I will choose Roger." Orgrim laughed. After a slight pause, a flash of light flashed in Orgrim's eyes, and he continued, "Then, one day, I will kill Shiji, sit in his place, and enjoy the scenery. Cooperate with others, then kill Shiji," the bald king murmured. There was a hint of uneasiness and fear in his eyes, but Orgrim did not see it. Presumably, Lord the pressure on them was very great, right? But things must be reversed. Sitting on this bright surface, how is it possible that the highest position in the world, with thousands of people kneeling down and worshipped like 5 old stars, could willingly crouch under a shady person, like a domestic dog, wagging its tail and begging for mercy? Therefore, soon, the uneasiness and fear in the eyes of the bald king, it dissipated. Then, ruthlessness and determination appeared. Back then, you could indeed choose to cooperate with Roger, but now, who should I choose? The bald king asked seemingly casually. Orgrim also seemed to treat this kind of thing as a casual chat, and said in a very natural tone, "Of course, whoever is strong enough will be chosen. The strong will only follow the strong. The principle of joining forces is very simple, isn't it?" The bald king again, he picked up the teacup, took a sip, and then said calmly, "You are right, the strong will only join forces with the strong. Bringing a weakling to cause trouble is asking for trouble. Pig teammates are a very scary thing. Look at warring states, his godson, is an obvious example." "Orgrim, are you strong enough?" the bald king suddenly asked. Orgrim threw the cigar in his hand casually on the obviously luxurious carpet in the office. A smoke hole was burned into the carpet, and then he stepped on it very naturally with his shoe. Put it on the cigar, twist it, and annihilate it. The 5 old stars did not change their faces, as if this carpet worth hundreds of millions of bellyrise did not exist. Orgrim stretched his body, and then there was a touch of unruliness in his tone, and he turned to look at the bald king, with a confident smile on his lips, and said, "No matter how you look at it, there is probably no one stronger than me in this world." "Even if it's Shiki?" the bald king asked softly. "Of course, even if Shiji," Orgrim said without hesitation. The bald king turned to look at the other 4 bosses. Although Big Beard and the others did not speak, there was a look of acquiescence in their eyes. The bald king then turned his head again, looked at Orgrim and said, "Now is not the time, Orgrim. It takes time for strong men to join forces. I hope that before that, we can continue to maintain friendly relations. If the time comes in the future, we will also invite you to marry Joa and tell you an interesting story." "Gee ha 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 ha, you are right, then I will look forward to it," Orgrim laughed and said. After a short pause, Orgrim looked at the bald king, grinned, and asked, "Let me guess, maybe in the story you want to tell, the protagonist is called the bald king's." There was also a smile on the corner of his mouth, and he whispered noncommittally, "Well, who knows? But it must be very interesting." "I like interesting stories," Orgrim nodded. "The steps of trust have been set up. In other words, it's not trust, it's just, I just happen to have Orgrim, and I just happen to have this kind of mentality. But the time has not come yet, and the 5 old stars don't seem to want to say anything more. But the attitude is already very obvious." Naturally, Orgrim didn't insist on asking anything. This topic was considered over. The bearded man stood up and said, Orgrim, you have come a long way and have been tired all the way. You must be hungry, right? Do you want to try Mary Joa's delicacies? Orgrim turned around. Said with a smile, of course, even if you come, I will definitely not be polite. Ha 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 ha, I really appreciate you more and more, the bearded man said with a smile. Thank you very much. Orgrim also smiled very casually. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 519. I didn't go to the restaurant where Wulaoxing eats. Because of Orgrim's special status, Wulaoxing made an exception and asked people to deliver all the meals to the office. And a big table was set up. There were no other people around, so there were still only the 6 of them. The Warring States Marshal downstairs heard that the 5 old stars had left Orgrim for dinner, and the meals were delivered to the office. I felt very sour in my heart. The Warring States period, have served the Navy for decades. I am a highly respected Marshal of the Navy and command the most powerful troops in the world. I have never even had a meal with the 5 old stars. He, Orgrim, has been a pirate for more than 10 years. He is extremely vicious and is known as the most evil pirate emperor in history. He actually came to Marijoya to have dinner with the 5 old stars? What happened to this world? Am I really in the wrong profession? Maybe the Field Marshal of Avalon could consider this? Nonsense. However, although Warring States felt very uncomfortable in his heart, he also knew that perhaps the 5 old stars and Orgrim had really reached some new secret agreement. This is very detrimental to the Navy. Nowadays, the 5 old stars almost acquiesce to the conflict between the Navy and Orgrim. As long as it does not turn into a frontal war or an all-out conflict, we must maintain a state of fighting without defeat. None of them spoke. But they also know in their hearts that their navy has been working hard to enhance its strength, plan for the future, and intervene in the new world. In the future, he will inevitably have to fight against Orgrim and other pirates. But now, if they really have some agreement with Orgrim that they can't guess. Perhaps in the future, when the navy is about to take action, the 5 old stars will stop them. That would be very uncomfortable. My pants have been taken off, I won't let you get on. Who can bear this? Therefore, Warring States felt that he would find a way to find out the secrets from Wulaoxing someday so that he could respond. The 5 old stars all started to eat, and the Sengoku Grand Marshal, Commander Jun, and Cyborg didn't just sit around, the 3 of them also made an appointment to have dinner together. These 3 military bosses didn't do anything as luxurious as the 5 old stars banquet with Orgrim. Just eat some casually. Judging from their status, they can be considered as ordinary people. In front of Sengoku was a rice bowl and a cup of tea, and Jun and Cyborg were about the same. It's not that they don't have the right to eat better. Given their status, they can eat anything from the delicacies served at Marijoya. But a few people don't have this kind of appetite. Mainly because the bastard Orgrim was on Marijoya. When they thought about this, nothing they ate tasted good and they had no appetite. After taking 2 mouthfuls of rice, Warring States took a sip of tea from his teacup and said, "General Commander, can the military expenditures be increased next year?" Commander Cyborg was eating his meal. Hearing this, Warring States looked up at Warring States and thought for a moment. After a moment, he said, "Maybe, I'll do it." "Okay, please." There was a smile on Marshal Warring States' lips, and he felt a little more relaxed. But before he could swallow his mouthful of food, suddenly a naval colonel rushed into the restaurant. Warring States looked at the guy, glanced at him and waved to him. The Navy captain also ran over quickly, immediately gave a military salute, and said in a deep voice, "Report to the Marshal, something happened on Fishman Island." Marshal Sengoku, whose mood had just improved, immediately fell down after hearing these words. What are you doing? Can you let people have a good meal? Since Jinbei became the king of the Shishibukai, at least the navy headquarters is in the Fishman. The influence of the island has become a little bit stronger. In the past, the navy could hardly detect what happened on the Fishman Island. Now, the intelligence work has been extended to some extent. It can understand everything regardless of the slightest change, at least when there is any big event. The Navy headquarters will not become blind. In the original story, the Warring States period did not invest too many resources in Murloc Island. Now in this time and space, because of the close relationship between Murloc Island, Orgrim, and Avalon, Warring States still pays close attention to the situation there. As soon as he heard that something happened on Fishman Island, he immediately thought that Orgrim and the 5 old stars had talked about something about Fishman Island and were about to start trouble. What happened? What happened to the Warhammer pirates? Marshal Sengoku asked in a deep voice. The Navy captain was stunned for a moment. What Warhammer pirates? He shook his head and said quickly, Marshal, it's not the Warhammer pirates' problem, it's the Tianlong people. This morning's problem. At that time, a cruise ship departing from Marijoy wanted to enter the Fishman Island, and there was Saint Don Quixote Muscard on it. Marshal Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that it was not about the Warhammer pirates, and then said, if there are celestial dragons, then there are celestial dragons. What does this have to do with us? Isn't it something that the CP agency should pay attention to? The naval colonel looked around and whispered, but Marshal, the ship sank and encountered the Neptune kind. Marshal Warring States was completely stunned. When the Tianlong people go on patrol, not to mention the top combat power of a general, at least they must be guarded by 2 or 3 lieutenant general level CP masters. The road to Fishman Island, it is indeed dangerous, but if you have serious masters and find some experienced people to lead the way, there should be no problem at all. For the Tianlong people, these are not problems. But unfortunately, this kind of thing happened. Is the Muse Gyarados dead? Marshal Sengoku asked without hesitation. If everyone dies, the problem will be even greater. It is very likely to destroy the fragile relationship that has been finally established between the world government and Fishman Island. No, Musguard Saint and a guard arrived at Fishman Island by luck, but, Musguard Saint may have been stimulated and became very nervous, so he kidnapped Princess Odohim of Fishman Island, talking about capturing Princess Odohim and making Mary Joan a slave, the Navy captain explained. The Warring States Marshal almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. To be honest, this matter does not seem to be particularly difficult for the Tianlong people to understand. Even if Jinbei is the king of the Shishibukai, it is nothing. Yes. In any other place, the Warring States period would not have paid attention to this nonsense. The Tianlong people had done it themselves, so they could just deal with it. This is a headache for the CP agency. But unfortunately, Fishman Island it's different. The relationship between the Neptune royal family and Orgrim is very close. As soon as Warring States looked at Commander Cyborg, the commander shook his head helplessly and said, Go, Warring States. Marshal Warring States nodded. Then he stood up, drank the tea in one gulp, turned around and headed towards the highest floor of the headquarters building. At this time, Orgrim was eating in the office with the 5 old stars. We were eating and chatting, the atmosphere was very pleasant. There was a knock on the door. The 5 old stars all frowned. They had already told them not to disturb them during this period. Why are there still people coming? Who is it? The bearded man asked in a deep voice. Report, it's me, Warring States, Marshal Warring States responded at the door. The expressions of the 5 old stars were a little surprised, but Warring States was an insider and brought Orgrim here. So there was no need to avoid anything, so the bearded man said again, come in. As soon as he finished speaking, Warring States immediately opened the door and walked in. Orgrim held a lobster claw in his hand, turned to look at the Generalissimo, and asked with a smile, "Have you eaten? Do you want to eat something together?" Marshal Warring States looked a little unhappy, but he ignored Orgrim. But at the same time, he did not avoid him. "After all, I am afraid Orgrim will receive news about this matter soon, and Neptune should be like, is he asking for help? Or Whitebeard? In short, no matter what, this matter cannot be bypassed by Orgrim. 5 adults, there is an emergency, Don Quixote Muscard Saint he, the Warring States Marshal quickly reported the situation to Wullaoxing. The 5 old stars, who were originally happily dining with Orgrim, now had 10,000 alpacas running back and forth in their hearts. Incompetent bungler. This is their general view of the general celestial dragon class today. However, the celestial dragons are, after all, the legal and rational representatives of their world government, and they are orthodox. The world government was built by 20 kings, and the descendants of the kings must be orthodox. But after more than 800 years, these Tianlong people have fallen into disgrace. They are simply the worms of the world government. Many unnecessary troubles are caused by their arrogance. Although the 5 old stars are also celestial dragons, they are the highest-ranking celestial dragons. The more they see the world clearly, the more they look down on these wastes. "I'm such a big shot, but I still want to sit down with Orgrim to eat and drink tea and have a relationship. You guys work all day long and you know how to hold yourself back." For a moment, the 5 old stars wished they could just shoot that Musgurud to death. Orgrim also looked a little surprised at this time. He didn't expect that Musgurud would do this. But at this time, the situation was very different. In the early years, Princess Otohim wanted to cooperate with the world government and then promote the rise of Fishman Island to the sea. Neptune was disdainful of her naive idea at the time and chose to cooperate with Orgrim. Facts have proved that Orgrim is very reliable. Now that Avalon is on Fishman Island, it is called second home by countless people. Therefore, from some perspectives, Fishman Island's long-cherished wish for hundreds of years has been fulfilled. At least in Avalon, they can breathe the sea air, walk freely, and do what they like without being discriminated against or restricted. It is precisely for this reason that Princess Otohim has given up the idea of cooperating with the world government in the past few years. She turned to Avalon's business. Although she has not been to Avalon, I heard that she invested in many businesses in Avalon. Therefore, the current Princess Otohim has no intention of coming to Marijoya with Musgurud Saint to express the demands of Fishman Island. Orgrim took another bite of lobster meat and found that the 5 old stars were also looking at him. "What do you want me to do?" Orgrim was stunned for a moment, then waved his hand and said, "As long as no one is killed, Neptune, I will explain it to you. I also know that this is not the original wish of your world government. Those things done by the idle celestial dragons." The 5 old stars nodded to Orgrim, and then the bald king took out a phone bug, fiddled with it twice, and contacted the CP agency. As soon as the phone bug was picked up, the bald king said in a deep voice, "Something happened to the Tianlong people, and I still need to get news from the Navy Marshal. I don't think you CP-0 are going to do it anymore, are you?" "I'm so sorry," the phone bug responded quickly. However, at this time, the CP agency had been severely squeezed by the Navy, and the 5 old stars had no intention of continuing to deal with them. After giving a warning, the bald king continued, "Within 30 minutes, I want the matter to be resolved." "Yes, guarantee the safety of the Musgurud Saint," the people from the CP agency responded. "No, what I want you to solve is not this problem, but to quickly restore peace to Fishman Island. No one in the Neptune royal family will have anything wrong. Tell that bastard Musgurud to get back to Marijoya," the bald king said harshly. Everyone in the CP agency was stunned. "This, if the Musgurd St, the person from the CP agency asked slightly hesitantly. After all, no matter what, this is still a Tianlong, and he can't afford to offend him. If necessary, let the shipwreck become a reality. Do this well, I'll need you in the future, Night Owl, the bald king said in a light tone. Yes, yes, Yao, the member of the CP organization who once competed with Orgrim for the Riri fruit in Avalon. It seems she seems to be getting lucky. Although Wulaoxing's words were light and airy, Yes Yao heard them very seriously. Shipwreck became a reality? Suggesting that I kill the celestial dragons. Damn it! But it seems that in this way, can we embrace the lap of Wulaoxing? What's going on here? Shouldn't the 5 old stars be on the same side as the Tianlong people? Aren't you compatriots? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 520. At the same time, on the Fishman Island in the deep sea, Neptune also looked very anxious. The Tianlong people suffered a shipwreck, and Fishman Island became one of the participating countries of the world government. Naturally, Neptune launched the rescue immediately. As a result, that bullshit celestial dragon actually arrested his wife and said he wanted to take Mary Joan back as a slave. This made Neptune very angry. Today I ask you to capture my wife and make her a slave. I, Neptune, will no longer be the king. Fight with you. At worst, all the Fishman Islands will be moved to Avalon, and they won't be treated like this bullshit franchise. If you have the guts, come to Avalon. See if Orgrim doesn't kill you. The scene at this time was very stalemate. Musgurud may have been really stimulated by something, and his expression was a little crazy. He held a gun in one hand and put it against Princess Otohim's head while shouting at Fishman Island to prepare a ship to escort him back to Marijoya. Behind him stood a slightly embarrassed CP agency guard. Neptune didn't dare to be too impatient, for fear that bastard Draco's gun would go off. Father, the great Prince Shark walked over with a phone bug in his hand. Neptune nodded to him, picked up the phone bug, and fiddled with it a few times. After a while, the phone bug was picked up. Orgrim's voice laughed. He passed it over. Your Majesty Neptune? Orgrim asked with a smile. Boss Orgrim, there is something I have to say hello to you in advance. We from Fishman Island may have to migrate to your Avalon, Neptune said helplessly. Gee ha 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 ha, I already know the matter. Don't worry, it won't be that bad. Just wait a moment, I'm already making arrangements. Orgrim said with a smile. In fact, moving Murloc Island to Avalon is not a particularly good thing for Orgrim. It may be able to supplement a lot of soldiers, but the resources of Murloc Island are also limited. Then there will be losses. Migration is not a matter of a day or two. During this period, it will inevitably greatly affect the business of the Avalon Deep Sea Free Trade Zone. At the same time, once the Fishman Island leaves, the world government will definitely take over the current situation. Their territory, the import and export of the new world at sea and under the sea, will all be captured by the world government. None of the pirates in the new world will feel better. Of course Orgrim will not be happy to see this situation. When Neptune heard Orgrim's words, his expression was filled with joy, and he said, "Thank you very much, Boss Orgrim." "You're welcome, we're friends," Orgrim said with a smile. He did not continue to say anything, and the two quickly hung up the phone. At this moment, Neptune suddenly saw the CP agency guard following the Tianlong people, and also answered a call bug arrived. After answering a few times, his expression became very surprised. Just when Neptune was thinking about what this guy was going to do, he saw him walking behind Musgard Saint and followed him in a low voice. Saint Musgurud said a few words. Saint Gurud Muse was still very irritable and crazy, and cursed angrily impossible. This young master. However, he didn't finish his words. Just look at the member of the CP organization who suddenly grabbed Musgard Saint's pistol, grabbed it with his backhand, and directly held down Musgard Saint. Neptune was shocked. Damn it! Is it said that the CP mechanism is the strongest shield of the Tianlong people? Is this the opposite? Another thought came to mind what Orgrim just said. Could it be that Orgrim sent undercover agents to the CP agency? Neptune did not react, but Prince Shark reacted very quickly. He quickly brought people up, controlled Muse Gerardus, and protected the frightened Princess Otohim. This, Neptune was at a loss. The guard from the CP agency just now quickly walked to Neptune and said, "I'm sorry, Your Majesty Neptune, for frightening you and Fishman Island. This is not the original intention of our world government. Later, a ship from the CP agency will arrive to escort the Muse Gurud Saint back to Marijoya. We promise not to let him find trouble on Fishman Island." Neptune looked at the sky with a strange expression, nodded, and said thank you. "It's nothing, I'm just following orders. I wonder if His Majesty Neptune can prepare a boat for me. I need to leave Fishman Island as soon as possible," the member of the CP organization said. "No matter what, if he does such a thing, he will not be able to return to Marijoya in a short time. If he goes back, he will die. There is no way that Saint Muse Gurud will let him go." So he was ready to run away. Originally, he didn't want to offend the celestial dragons like this. But an order came from above that he must do this, otherwise he would be the first to kill him when he returned to Marijoya. This guy is also smart. Knowing that Saint Musgard was a celestial dragon, he could not lower his status and came forward to protect him. If he did not act in accordance with that strange order and return to Marijoya, he would definitely die. And if he acted in accordance with this order, there would be something higher up. Give yourself a way to survive and ask him to stay in Musgard, Saint Queen. He should leave the Fishman Island as soon as possible. When the limelight passes in the future, there will be reuse in the future. Under coercion and inducement, this guy jumped back without hesitation. It can also be said that you are gambling on your future, right? Neptune seemed to be able to understand how difficult it was for a small person under such power and conspiracy, but he did not embarrass him. He prepared a fast boat for him and arranged for him to leave Fishman Island quickly. It's really amazing. Can Orgrim's influence already affect this kind of decision-making by the world government? Neptune murmured softly. Enter Holy Land Marijoya. Before they even finished the meal, the 5 old stars had received a report from the CP agency again. They said they had taken control of Muse Gurud. Holy shit, just waiting for their ship to pass by, they can take the people back to Marijoya. The not-so-big storm on Fishman Island was strangely resolved. Seeing that nothing happened, the warring states marshal felt in his heart. He also breathed a sigh of relief and left the office of the 5 old stars. But when walking in the corridor, Marshal Warring States looked very serious. The 5 old stars even attacked the Tianlong people for the sake of Fishman Island. No, not for Fishman Island, maybe for Orgrim? What's the deep meaning here? Warring States always felt that this matter was not simple, but he couldn't touch that level. Feeling bad. At this time in the office, the Bald King also looked at Orgrim and said, "What a coincidence, this is good, it allows you to see our sincerity." Orgrim grinned at the corner of his mouth and said it is true. Fishman Island, Princess Otohim, and that Muse Gurud are not important figures to them. The Wu Laoxing's decisive choice this time was not because of the relationship between the world government and Fishman Island. But he was making it for Orgrim to see. Show their sincerity and show that they dare to kill the Tianlong people when necessary. Although Musgard Saint is just an ordinary celestial dragon. But they were also Tianlong people, and they had the same blood as Lord Im. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Today they can take action against the Muse Gurud. In the future, when the time comes, you may not dare to be ruthless and attack Lord Im. Such a coincidental event on Fishman Island, through a combination of circumstances, actually strengthened the unspeakable secret relationship between Orgrim and the 5 old stars. He didn't stay in Marijoya for much longer. After eating, Orgrim and the 5 old stars had another afternoon tea. Then he left Mary Joa directly. There was no need to bother with Jun anymore. Orgrim quickly disappeared into Marija. The 5 old stars also know that this should be the backup and support arranged by Orgrim. If they had any ambush this time, they might not be able to catch Orgrim, right? Fortunately, things didn't come to that point. 2 weeks later, a big story was published in the News of the World. It is said that the Golden Emperor Gilder Tetsalo of the Dark World has reached a comprehensive agreement with the world government and will jointly fund the establishment of a mobile neutral zone. This neutral zone will build a future world-class entertainment city involving various entertainment businesses, such as gambling and so on. On the surface, this news does not seem to be anything special. But the big guys who know some deeper inside stories can feel a different taste. Who is the Golden Emperor Gilder Tetsalo? The person in charge of the Dark Bank of Avalon. You said he has nothing to do with Orgrim or the Warhammer pirates. Is this possible? What? You said he should be a member of the Don Quixote family. Because he and Doflamingo often go out to various occasions together? Aren't those many flamencos also part of the Warhammer pirates? So from the surface of the news, this seems to be a cooperation between the world government and the Golden Emperor, and does not involve anyone. Not even Doflamingo, the king of the Shichibukai, is mentioned. But on a deeper level, the bosses all know that this should be a cooperation between Khazgaro's Orgrim and the world government. This proves that the relationship between the Warhammer pirates and the world government, which already had some inexplicable tacit understanding, seems to be getting closer. What is this all about? The same goes for the Navy and pirates. The minions at the bottom are fighting fiercely, and the upper levels are sitting together to eat and drink tea. As for this neutral zone, the world government and the Golden Imperial City stated that wherever the mobile entertainment city goes, within 200 nautical miles of the surrounding area, it is a neutral zone and any conflict is prohibited. Otherwise, you will be held accountable by the Golden Emperor and the world government. The world government's pursuit is very threatening. The Golden Emperor is just that, a newcomer who has just emerged in the Dark World. But the problem is, the overlord of the Dark World standing behind the Golden Emperor is not so easy to provoke. There is probably no one in this world who can live happily after provoking Orgrim and the world government at the same time. This sentence is not a joke. It also made many people realize that this neutral zone might really be managed. It seems to be quite beneficial to melon-eating people like them. If there is any problem in the future, as long as you have money, you can take refuge in this neutral zone. Facts have proved that in the future, many big bosses will indeed take their belongings with them to the golden city of Tetsalo when their boats capsize and run away. Not for anything else, just for the reputation of the neutral zone. There, as long as they don't cause trouble, they can get the dual protection of Orgrim and the world government. There is no safer place in the world than that neutral zone. Of course, the premise is that you must have enough Baileys to support all your expenses in the Golden City. Once Bailey has spent all his money, how can he let beggars in a place where rich people and tycoons gather? Either sign a contract in the Golden City and work hard, or get out of the Golden City's sphere of influence.